Yeah. It goes up on YouTube, and then we clip it as well for Instagram. It's all right. The guest always fits better because it's one person. So the guest always looks good.
Yeah, you'll look
I
fine.
thought I thought you got I woke you guys up.
No, I was looking at a life insurance policy, and
Wait,
it
are
was
you? Which one is Sam? Are you Sam with the long hair and you have your name in front of you?
no, I'm Sam.
Okay,
I'm Eli.
all right. We got Sam Phillips on Eli's shirt.
Oh, that's weird. It's backwards 'cause it's on mine now.
Yeah.
I have a question. What's your middle name?
Don.
Okay.
Okay.
I was hoping it was also Joe.
Oh,
In my head, it's been Jody Joe White this whole
well,
time.
you know, that's funny because actually I have some friends that call me that.
Okay.
Jody Joe, yeah. But I do think like when my parents initially named me, they thought like Tony Joe, Jody Don, but like no, I just I was a single name, dude.
All right.
Tony Joe runs smooth.
Yeah,
It flows.
and I just
But
didn't have that swag to be a double name dude.
yeah, you gotta have a specific kind of energy.
Yeah, you have to put out double name energy.
Yeah,
But so you found a bunch of old recordings in a
Yeah.
storage unit.
yeah. I mean, basically, just a quick rundown is I'm started managing my dad in like the year 2000. He at that point was managed by Roger Davies, and Roger Davies had become really busy with like Janet Jackson and Cher and other major acts, and so I just started doing things, built a website, email list, merch, putting out some records, and Roger was like, you just need to take it over, you're already doing it, and so I managed my dad from 2000 to 2018, and those tapes were always in storage, but he wasn't somebody who like looked back at his music very much. It was like, okay, let's just go on to the next thing. And so when he passed away, that's when like my job sort of changed from like, well, what do you want to do next to what did you leave behind?
Right.
And so it was at that point I started getting into the storage unit, realizing how many tapes that there were, and then once I started transferring tapes, that's really when the light went off about how much unheard music that there actually was just sitting there. So and that's a long-winded answer, but just kind of to know the history is I think important. That it was always there, we just he had no interest in looking back at it.
Right. And so that's where this new record, The Swamp Fox, came from, right?
Yeah, a lot of it. So about I guess a year and a half ago, the Flying Mojito Brothers were introduced to me through Hunter Williams and Jacob Lapidus at CAA, and so the Mojito Bros came in town. They came to my office, and we just like listened to unreleased recordings for like 6 hours.
I bet that was cool.
It was fun. It was so fun, and these guys, like, are monster fans, and so they knew everything about his history and whatnot. But then also, like, the music that they really gravitated towards was the period where my dad didn't have a record deal, and he was still making music, and so we had like all of these recordings and no label that we had to deal with for
Right.
sampling, licensing, and all of that stuff. So the album was a mixture of a couple of songs that had been released on the album The Real Thing, and then there were a handful of songs too that had never been released. So yeah, that's how it came about.
How does that process work if you have vocals and some stuff done by a guy who's no longer alive, and then a band comes in and tracks the rest of it, but it has to sound cohesive?
Yeah, so the recordings that they were given initially had a lot on them. It wasn't just like
Okay.
okay, it's just some vocals and guitar. They were like full blown band recordings. So most of what you hear on these songs are from the original sessions, and then they hype up the drums a little bit, and then they give it a little bit of that electronic feel. But for the most part, like the guitars, the horns, the background, but all of that stuff you're hearing was already there. I mean,
Okay.
that was kind of the thing is like my dad was a home studio guy, right?
Right.
So he would just have people over to the house and record just for fun, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I knew that there was new and old on this record, but I was like trying to pick it out, and it's not easy because it's
No,
mixed
because
really
it's
good.
pretty much like all from the same, like probably 5 year time period, maybe even tighter than that.
Okay.
Um, and like I said, he always, my entire life, he always had a tape machine and a home studio. Like he was always recording, always working.
Yeah, I like a lot of that stuff. Like, every time I watch a documentary about a guitar or musician guy from your dad's generation, they always are like Link Wray's Rumble,
Hmm.
But the album Link Wray put out called Link Wray in like 1971, that was him in a cabin with just home track. It's a way better album.
I mean, so here's the cool thing too. In the process of like finding all these tapes, like I found one that was it just said like session, and it was postmarked where he had mailed it to himself in Corpus Christi, Texas in 1966. So this predates Polk Salad Annie,
Right.
Randy, Georgia, all of that. And I was like, well, shit, I got to hear this. I wonder what this could be. And so I transferred it, played it, and it's unbelievable. It's just him by himself on like a back porch in Corpus Christi, Texas, and it's mostly covers, which is also really cool because he wasn't someone who did a lot of covers, and it's just amazing quality. So
Did he mail it to himself at the house he currently lived at, or was it a different location?
no, he mailed it to himself in Corpus Christi at his home residence because that's how you copyrighted things.
Right. Right.
That's how you
Oh.
would prove if someone like
Yeah.
tried to steal your music. No, you could say that. Well, no, I had recorded this previously.
Check out the postage on this.
Yeah, yeah. So it had the date to prove it.
Oh, I never knew why people would do that.
I've heard of that being done.
There's a lot of weird stuff like that and a lot of it does come back to copyright law. So let's go back to the beginning. Let's talk about your dad growing up and how he got actually into playing music, because he's a pretty specific sound, which I think comes out more also on this latest record. Like, to me, the swamp rock thing, that's what this record sounds like. How do we end up getting there?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, he started playing music just with his family. I think he was the youngest of like 7 kids, and so they lived on a cotton farm in the middle of Louisiana, the middle of nowhere, really. And so he, just started playing with them. And then I think, like, as he got older, I think everybody started, older meaning like 17 or whatever. I think everyone around him sort of realized that, like, he had a little more natural talent than everyone else. And so he left as soon as he graduated high school and went to Corpus Christi, Texas, and like lived at a hotel and was the house entertainment. And so that was what he did for I don't know how long. And then
And what year was this?
that would have been probably 67,
Okay.
maybe 60, yeah, maybe 65 actually.
Okay, so in the mid 60s.
Yeah, let's see. So if he was born in 43, right? So then like 61 might have been when he first went, and so this was probably 63 when he met my mom, I guess.
Okay. And
And
that's
she
a
was
weird.
the one that encouraged him to start writing his own songs.
Well, also that period of time interests me, because if you listen to 1963 music versus 1966 music, it is a different ball game.
Sure.
And then you listen to like the first Animals record and go, that was 1961. What the fuck were these guys doing?
I know. Yeah, it's crazy to think like what all happened from 60 to 70. There's a lot in there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a different. People talk about now where like the world's so it's changing, it's weird, and it's like, well, look at 1965 to 68. Like, you think it's weird? Like, it was a fully different ball game. But coming up at that time, being a young guy who's starting to play music, and I imagine a lot of the original music was more like folk music, for lack of a better term, and then rock and roll suddenly breaks. How?
Yeah, he always talks about the song "Ode to Billy Joe" by
Right.
Bobby Gentry is really the song that like s- was the light bulb for him, right? He was like, wow, that, I think one, he felt like the song was about him in certain ways, but it also introduced him to that storytelling, style of songwriting that really became, so famous for him and Christofferson and a lot of the other guys, later on in the 70s.
Yeah, I mean, there's a guy, Jim Ford?
Uh,
He
it's a very common name, so
it is.
I may know a few Jim Fords.
He's an interesting guy. He's from Harlan, Kentucky, and he put out some very good records. One of them's like Working My Way to LA. I'd look into that. But he would like to lie a lot. And so he was the guy that took credit for writing Ode to Billy Joe. He did not. Like like at all.
Yeah.
Some of the songs he wrote, in my opinion, I'm like, why'd you lie? These are great. You just had your own thing. But he's another guy who I think of when I think of Tony Joe White, not because they sound the same, but because the storytelling in a lot of their songs, and I can tell the place that they're from.
Hmm.
I think that plays a big role in certain people's music.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of the musicians that are the real deal, they're just writing about what they know, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's why a lot of times, like, the best songwriters and the best bands and musicians are people who like grow up on hard times, and they're writing about what's around them, and they have one guitar that they saved up for, and they're in their garage, like, or making music like the White Stripes or Detroit or whatever. But that garage style development, I think, is very important, because you see a lot of, especially in Nashville, right? You have kids going to Belmont to learn how to be musicians, and it's like, like, can art be trained? Like, I mean, I guess, but I don't think it's going to have like the same,
Well,
it's not going to stand out, I guess you would say.
at the
That's a good
same
way.
time, like the Beatles are exactly that. Like they saved up for guitars, had bad guitars, came up in Liverpool, like a bad place, and you can't train a guy to be Paul McCartney. That guy just has to exist.
Yeah.
There has to just be something inside of the person, I think, that leads them to need to put this out.
I mean, that's why it's so rare to have people who stand out in history as being authentic, because, you have to, one, they have to be authentic. Two, they have to come from somewhere that gives them the inspiration. And three, they have to have talent, and it's like, I think it's rare to have that combination.
Well, and then people have to discover them.
Well, then they have to be discovered. Yeah, I guess that's,
Oh, like if you look at old number one hits, I saw this like sometime in the last month. It was December 7th, the week of that, 1971, the top 40, right? There's 4 songs in there that I knew, and I know like all I listened to is shit from that time,
yeah.
and I'm like, who the fuck are any of these people? you know?
Like one hit wonders.
Yeah, and then you just end up with people, then you go, okay, well, Chris Christopherson's in there, but he's like one of those guys that you're like, well, he's undeniable. He's authentic. He's that guy. Everyone else is like the Belmont people, where a studio threw them together and went, hey, I think that's something.
Yeah, we got to hit it.
Studies show this works.
Yes.
And it did one time,
Yeah.
Right.
So how close did he grow up to Cajun country?
I never heard him mention those words together.
Okay, because, if you look at, Doug and Rusty Kershaw, it's abundantly clear that they came up there. And I was listening to the record, knowing he's from Louisiana, because Louisiana, north and south of 10, is a different state,
Right.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And he always referred to his music as swamp rock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you asked him like, what kind of artist were you, he would have said blues. That's just, that's how he viewed himself. Now, obviously, his music changed so much year after year. So, like in the '70s, he was making some swamp funk disco just
Right.
because he felt like it. And then he had a period in like the early 80s, he made some country just because he wanted to. And then, we have some stuff too from like the mid 80s that we haven't released where he has like a DX7 keyboard and a drum machine.
Really?
It is just like, it is so ridiculous. Like, he's got a song called The Spa, and it's about like when he was referring to a spa as like what we would call like going to the gym now. And so like he's talking about everybody working out at the spa, and it's just so ridiculous. So so we have that stuff we're gonna warm everybody up with some other things first, but
Right.
then it's like it's just so fun because I have all of this music that encompasses his entire life, and able to find creative ways to group things together, release them, and then work with other artists on production when it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's mid 60s, and he's working at a hotel, doing however many sets a night. That's where he meets your mom, and she talks him into songwriting. Where do we go from there?
So from there, I guess what happened next was he was planning to go to Memphis, and was going to go there and try to like get a record deal or whatever. And as he tells the story, which I don't know if you've watched Sonic Highways,
Yes.
so if you go back and watch the Nashville episode, like
Okay.
it's all about Tony Joe, and he tells the story on there as well. But so basically, he was planning on going to Memphis, and for some reason, he just drove through Memphis and went to Nashville. And then he got here, and I think he went to like the Bluebird Cafe and like asked some lady like, "Hey, I'm trying to get a record deal. Who do I need to talk to?" And somehow like she had given him Bob Beckham's phone number at who I guess was at like Combine and was also involved with Monument. And then as Bob Beckham tells the story, like that he was really hungover at his office one day, and he gets a call, and they're like, "Hey, this guy drove all the way up from Texas." He's like, "Oh, I don't feel like it, but oh, okay, just send him in." And said he went in and said like as soon as he saw my dad, he's like, "Oh, okay, wow, this guy." And then it said as soon as he started playing, he was like, "All right, you're in. Like this is special." So yeah, it was literally like that random how it all came together.
Man.
But he didn't end up necessarily being a Nashville guy.
No, he was never a Nashville guy. I mean, he just didn't want songwriting to be a job.
Right.
So like he would always write by his campfire at night, and he may write 2 songs in a night, or he may not write anything for 2 weeks. Like it just was if something comes to him, but if it doesn't, he wasn't going to force it. And so that's what he would always say, just make sure I don't ever have to become a briefcase songwriter. He didn't want to have to go to work at 10 or 11 in the morning, and that just wasn't how he was motivated to be creative.
Well, I think honestly, the only place that ever worked out was the Brill Building with Carole King and those people. You listen to that and you're like, okay, you guys are pretty good. But most of the time, I mean, also people don't realize that old Nashville had basically the same makeup as new Nashville. Like a lot of people blame Nashville now for country music and then point to something that was written in the exact same format, but it was just 50 years ago.
Yeah. Well,
You know.
if you watch the Sonic Highways episode, what's interesting and what really became the focal point of the episode, and it clearly wasn't by intent, was how Nashville changed. And so basically in the 70s you had Waylon and Will and these guys, and like they were calling the shots, and they were recording when they wanted to, and they were they had the record labels kind of under their thumb for the most part, and the record labels got tired of that. And so in the early 80s they split up the songwriting and the singing. So it wasn't like, hey, Waylon's got some songs he wrote and he's making an album and he's going to tell me what's going on. It was like, hey, let's find the best looking person with the best voice, and then let's pick some songs for them to sing. And so,
Written by an ugly person with a bad
yeah, written
voice.
by an ugly person who doesn't need to be on stage. And so, like, and so when you watch that, watch Sonic Highways, you see like my dad brings that point to the light, which really kind of dictates the entire episode. Which, you know, it's an interesting thing. I don't think it's necessarily good or bad. It's just how the industry changed.
Well, I mean, I think there's old artists like we were talking about a little bit ago, where you look at them, and I don't want to call anyone out by name, but you go, you don't look like a star, you know? I mean, Willie Nelson doesn't look like a star.
No, none of them did.
No.
Like, Chris Christopherson does. He's handsome as
Yeah.
hell. But, like, and Waylon's pretty good
But he
looking.
also left music to be an actor because of
Yeah,
his looks.
he's the only one that made that transition well.
Yeah.
But you know, a lot of the original people just were genuine individuals that came up and had a talent. But then you have people like Elvis. I think you know where I'm going with this, which didn't write a lot of songs, but did have a lot of talent and looked the part, and did a couple songs like Polk Salad Annie. I imagine that broke your dad a little bit.
Yes, that was huge for him. But you know what's interesting is Elvis never had that on an album, right?
Right.
It was like the staple of his live show, like his
Okay.
finale song. And so, you know, since then it's been on Elvis movies and whatnot. It's on some soundtracks, but the other songs like that Elvis recorded with my dad, For Old Time's Sake, I've Got a Thing About You, Baby, like those, you know, those are the ones that were on albums and that he, you know, that was more tangible, I think, at the beginning. But then when Elvis flew him out to Las Vegas and he saw him perform Polk Salad Annie, like that, that changed everything.
But do you make money from live? Like, would he make money from Polk Salad Annie performances, or would it just be the record out, like tracks?
Well, through BMI, you do get paid for public performance.
Okay.
So like, but you know, I wasn't around when Elvis was touring, so I don't know if that is something that's, you know, happened more recently or if it was actually happening then.
Right.
Yeah, I just wonder if it drove him nuts, where he was just like, just please put it on one album. Just
You know, that's a good question. Yes, I know he did want that to happen, and he also, like, there's a clip of Elvis in the back of a taxi cab, like humming "Rainy Night in Georgia" and singing part of it. My dad always I think that one more because Polk Salad, you know, he saw it live and
right.
it felt real, but "Rainy Night in Georgia" was more the one he was like, gosh, I wish he would have recorded that because it just would have been so incredible.
Yeah, he would have done that real good. Now that I'm thinking about it,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a great song.
I don't know
didn't
what
realize.
the movie is. There's a little clip where he's in the back of like some kind of car limo or something. He's singing it.
Well, that song, I didn't realize that your dad wrote that until we started looking into stuff for this podcast. I heard that song accidentally, listened to Sirius XM 70s on 7. We're not sponsored by them, but I just pushed them.
It's good stuff.
You know, I was like, I don't know who Brooks Benton is, and I don't know this song. And it was one of those times where I was like, oh damn, that's a really good song.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's a great song. It's just, you know, again, so authentic, right? It's like you can feel that moment in time that the person is singing about.
Was he opinionated about people doing his songs? Was it like, well, he did a shitty version of that, or was it like, hey, you know,
I
my
mean,
version's better?
he was honestly he was really grateful for
Okay.
anyone recording his song. He thought that was an honor. Now that being said, Tina Turner and Kenny Chesney both recorded Steamy Windows, right?
Uh-huh.
He clearly thought Tina Turner's version was much better.
Yeah.
well, you know,
And Kenny Chesney would probably tell you the same thing. I mean, this was on like his first album in the 80s. You know, so like he did have an opinion about it, but it wasn't like, you know, oh,
He
I
kept
didn't want this person to sing my song. It was
Right.
never like that.
like with his actual music career, not songwriting. What did that look like? Was he regularly touring? What was
Yes,
the deal?
so That was a very there were lots of ebbs and flows to like his own career. So in the early 70s, like he was taking off, like he was, he could have been on the trajectory of Bob Dylan and lots of other people around that time. But when the record label was like, okay, we want you to move to LA or New York, he was like, no, I'm not doing that. And he bought like 1,000 acres in Arkansas in the middle of nowhere and wouldn't tour, didn't do press. And so they sort of turned their back on him in terms of the promotion side of things. And so, so he sort of died down in the mid 70s. And then in the 80s, he got hooked up with Waylon and was going out on the road. And then he was like, I don't really like touring with this group. I mean, it was wild as shit. They had Hell's Angels as bodyguards, and they were just like going through towns and wrecking venues and wrecking dressing rooms. And my dad wasn't really that wild, and it was a lot of drugs and stuff back then. And he was just, and Waylon jokes about it too. He's like, Tony Joe was lazy. He wouldn't come back out on tour once we took a break, and it was just too much for him. And so then, like in the 80s, like he didn't really have anything going on, like he was still writing, he was still recording at home. It just wasn't being released. Which is a blessing for me now, right? Because we have all this stuff we can put out, and it's probably going to be appreciated more now than it would have been then. But yeah, so then in the late 80s, he got hooked up with Roger Davies, who had him writing songs for Tina Turner. And so then he picked back up. He was touring all over Europe, opening for Clapton, Joe Cocker. He was all over the place. And then as the 90s were winding down and I was graduating college is kind of when he started, he was kind of going away again. And I guess from like 95 to 2000 really didn't have a lot going on. And so when I started working with him, I was like, all right, well, we got to put out some records. And so we started a little label and found distribution, set up a website, and then all of a sudden we started getting interest for live shows through the website. And then we picked back up with the company Martial Arts out of London, who does a lot of big touring acts and whatnot. And so things picked back up. So then he started touring Europe, Australia, and then doing some U.S. dates as well. And that was kind of like the resurrection that we were on all the way up until he passed away. He was in New York playing shows a couple of weeks before that.
Yeah, there's I noticed, because I'm about to turn 30, so I'm not that old yet. But I know when I was in high school, there started to be this second coming of a lot of stuff from the 60s, 70s. Light in the Attic Records did a lot of it, where there was people, that's where that guy Jim Ford Records came back from, like Robert Lester Folsom and all those people, where most of them didn't have any career at the time, right? Like they didn't have people cutting their records, they weren't touring with Waylon Jennings. They did 2 albums and they were great, and then they got forgotten for whatever reason. But it seems like interest around 2010 really like revitalized in a lot of the old acts, and I think it's still there. I'm not sure. You probably have a better idea of it than me because you see the numbers. But I think there's an interest there for old acts that are not, the top 10.
Yeah.
Right. Deeper cuts.
Yeah, I mean, people love discovery, right? Like, I mean, being in music, and especially like from your guys' point of view, like, it's cool to be able to tell somebody about something that they don't know, but they like, right?
Right.
And so I think that's, really what the sweet spot is for us is my dad made so much great music, but because of the decisions he made, he wasn't over publicized. So,
Yeah.
it leads to the opportunity for discovery now.
Yeah, it seems like he had a pretty good relationship with his, I don't know, creative process. More so,
Yeah.
like it seemed like the fact that he recorded so much without a deal, without touring and stuff, just seems like he really loved doing that.
Yeah, I mean, he was just unwavered by any of it. It was just
that sounds really rare.
Yeah. I was like, oh, we got a label? Okay.
Right.
Oh, we don't? Okay.
Yeah.
He was still making music.
I really loved that.
But
Now he cared what people thought, right? Like he
Sure.
liked reading like positive reviews of the album, and but like also it wasn't like he was getting a lot of negative reviews.
Yeah.
So
Seemed like he just had his priorities straight.
he did, and he did what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
And you listen to his music, and you listen to a lot of the songs. There's a song "Rebellion" that was on the album, the beginning, and that's basically like his mantra of life. It's just like, he said something like, one of the lines is like, "Hook lines make me feel like a fish." Just he didn't want to do things like by a stereotypical way. He
Right.
just wanted freedom in his music, and that's what he always told me. It's why he was so thankful of the work we did together. He was just like, Joe, he's like, this is total freedom for me. All I got to do is go in the studio and play shows and watch people. It's freedom. I don't have to worry about, you know, any of the other stuff. And so, like, he would do some interviews, and he would, he was pretty easy to work with.
Yeah.
As time went on, and there were certain things that, like traveling was, if you're in traffic or traveling or late for, like, that stuff was obviously very stressful. But for the most part, he was just thankful that, like, he was able to make his music and play shows and go fishing or play golf when he wanted to, and pretty simple.
Freedom.
a lot of times, the parent-child manager-client thing does not pan out.
Usually.
That's a pretty
Yeah.
rare situation.
I think the good part about it was that we're so different. Like I was born basically, like, I just felt very business. Like I never really had interest in playing instruments, and anything I would do in the studio would just be more like Pro Tools production work, and listening to songs with him and making suggestions and that sort of thing. But it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to promote my own songwriting, my own. I never had that in the back of my head, so I was able to just,
Yeah.
go to grad school, focus on getting better at business and understanding the business, and then using that to grow his business.
Right. And bringing
So-
your talents to the table.
That's right. I mean, it's a totally different skill set, and we worked well together.
Sounds like it, man.
And it didn't put stress on you guys.
No, I mean, like I said earlier, if we're lost in Japan and wondering if we're going to make our flight, like, yeah, he's pissed.
Yeah.
And usually pissed at me, like that I was able to control it, which wasn't true. But
Right.
like, people ask me that a lot, and I always say, everything was like twice as stressful when it was stressful, but it was also twice as enjoyable when something great happened,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
Like, plays a sold out show in Amsterdam and gets a standing ovation, and we're backstage after, like, we're just hugging, like, we're so happy about what's happening. So, like I said, it was a double-edged sword, but I'm thankful for everything that we did while we worked together.
Is your mom still around?
She is. She lives in Franklin, and is 83 and is doing great.
Is she involved in any of this?
She wrote a lot of songs with him
Okay.
through
Okay,
the
cool.
years, but basically I just, I run the entire business, and make sure she's taken care of, and we, I'll meet up and go through things with her, projects we're working on, and she's always just like, oh, I'm so proud. I just can't believe all this. Your dad would be so proud, all of this stuff happening, and it's great. It's very rewarding.
Yeah, it's
Congratulations. That's really cool.
I mean, thank you for saying that. I haven't really, I don't feel like I'm at the point to be congratulated yet. You know what I mean? We've got a lot of music and a lot of work to do, and I just want to, like, spend my life making sure it's all out there.
Well, congratulations on the process.
Thank you for enjoying the process. Thank you.
Cool.
well, I think if you felt like you were at the point to be congratulated, that wouldn't be a good thing.
Yeah.
Because then you'd be like, all right, I guess we're good. I guess
Yeah.
I did it.
Yeah. Like, what, like, there's no end, right? This
you've
music
got-
will live forever.
Yeah, and you've got material to work through.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
Well, we saw something about him working with Dan Arbach that kind of happened, but also didn't.
Yeah, I wasn't familiar with that one.
Yeah, what's up with that?
Dan released an album in 2019 called Smoke from the Chimney.
Okay.
Well, so I think what you're referring to is they had always talked about
Yeah.
working together, but
Right.
at that point in time, Dan was in Ohio, hadn't quite moved here yet, and my dad was like, well, "I'm not going to Ohio." And then I think he got his studio here, and it just, for one reason or another, they just like my dad would have been very difficult to work with in a studio where you're like, all right, well, let's redo this part. Let's redo, like, that's just not how he rolled. His way of recording was like, okay, let's invite the musicians to the studio. Don't let them hear anything in advance. I'll run the tape and kind of start playing, and we'll do it until we get it right.
Okay.
Back it up, start over. Back it up, start over. And so, like, he was in control of the process. He was teaching the songs to his musicians he liked, and it was it's where he was comfortable. Like, for him, the idea of like going to a studio and working with a producer and changing music and like that was just is exhausting for him. So they didn't do it while he was alive, but after he passed away, I had transferred this reel of, and these were multi-track recordings that were a little more recent from his studio in Franklin. And so like these songs were all over the place. Like none of them you could really even give them a genre, right? It was, very, very tough to put in a box. And so Dan and I had known each other a long time, and I was like, Dan, would you be interested in working on any songs? He's like, I don't know, send them over. And he was like, these are all incredible. I want to do all of them. I was like, what? And so like that became the album. And if you haven't listened to that album, it's amazing.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Yeah,
he seems
Smoke
to
from
go
the
back.
Chimney. I mean, I think Dan Auerbach is one of the best producers in the world. I mean, I don't know if you've been to his studio
No.
on 8th Avenue. I mean, it is meticulous. Like, it's perfect. Like, every piece of vintage gear, perfectly restored. It's meticulous. Like, everything he does and, like, every player he brings in is with a specific point and purpose. He'll be like, oh, well, this song, I want this guitar player. And so he brought Marcus King to play slide on a particular song. And then he had, other guitarists who maybe have more of a, flamenco acoustic style players for another song. He just has such a great vision for finding like specific players, specific parts, and developing songs in somewhat of an unpredictable way.
Yeah.
So I think,
he did that. I think it was Dr. John's last record,
Yeah.
if I remember right.
Yeah.
And that's one of those where, like, first time I listened to it, I was like, I don't think Dr. John has any business sounding this good anymore. Like a lot of.
Yeah, I know you're right. I mean, I also, I think what's cool about Dan and being in Nashville is that like he's not pigeonholed at all, right? I mean, he's making all kinds of music. I mean, you even saw one year he puts out Yola,
Yeah,
right?
that's a good record.
And then a few months later he puts out Hank Jr. Rich White Honky Blues, and it's like who else can like skate that line besides Dan? It's amazing.
I'd like to point out that Rich White Honky Blues is maybe the best name of a record ever. That's
Have you
fucking
listened to that record?
Yeah. Yeah, I
It's
didn't say it was
awesome.
the best record. It's a fine record, but that name is fucking incredible.
His name is ridiculous.
The Black Keys, my favorite record of theirs is the Junior Kimbrough one.
Oh yeah, that is really good.
And I mean that record, that's a hell of a record. But I find it interesting when there's people like Dan, and I mean this happened obviously in your dad's generation as well, where like if you ask them who they're into, they would be like, Robert Johnson or Woody Guthrie, or it always goes back a little bit, and it's always fascinating to see who the people that influenced the musician now was.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, Dan has more knowledge about music than anybody I know. I don't know if you ever get a chance to go see like where he and Pat DJ together.
No.
The stuff he's playing, you're like, what is this? I love it. What is this? This is awesome. And it's like deep dive, late 60s, early 70s. He has quite the library of musical knowledge.
Yeah, then you end up looking up someone like Junior Kimbrough, and it's like he had. You do the math, and it says he has like 84 kids, I think, by
Oh,
like 15 different women. You're like, that's still too many per woman, man. Like, that doesn't
like
make
how
any,
did that happen? Yeah,
like,
Doesn't
that's
it?
yeah.
it doesn't make any sense. But my brain's telling me this is a fact, and if it's not, I'm sorry. But your dad was friends with Mark Knopfler.
Yes.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Okay.
They were good. They were good friends and exchanged guitars. Did some songs together. There's a song called "Not One Bad Thought" that's on the Uncovered album. The two of them. That's really great.
Yeah, Mark Knopfler is an underrated guitar player.
Oh, definitely.
But when you were growing up, did you meet these people? Because sometimes kids of these, you know, older
Yeah.
acts do meet them. Sometimes they don't.
Yeah. I mean, so like going back to the '70s when I was a kid, he would have like Duck Dunn and Blues Brothers were at our house all the time, and Booker T and the MGs and guys like that. Probably some actors too, like I think maybe Jim Brolin. They were good friends. Actually, I
Okay.
found some tapes that are. It's like a Jim Brolin album that my dad produced, and I haven't
What?
listened to it yet. But
Well, that'd be the first thing I'd play.
it's on like a 2-inch tape that I don't like. I have to
Yeah.
go get it transferred or whatever, which we'll probably do and check it out. But then like once we moved to Nashville, he and Waylon were best friends, and so I was over there at Waylon's house all the time. Shooter was like 5 or 6 years younger than me, I believe, and we hung out a bunch. And Shooter and I did a podcast for Outlaw Country recently for his electric rodeo show,
Yeah.
and he brought up the fact that I scared him because he was young and I'm too young, and I made him watch Faces of Death at our house or something, and just like warped his mind as a
That
young.
sounds right.
He blames me for his for for how he turned out.
Not being able to sleep at night.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
When you're growing up around people like that, because a lot of these people, like Waylon, is a mythic figure for people that haven't met the guy. Does that exist anymore, or is there a mythology? That's the word. A
No.
mythology to these people, or are they just guys that your dad was friends with?
You mean in terms of like how I viewed them?
Yes.
Well, I think maybe now it feels more mythical. But when I was a kid, I was just a kid. Like I didn't really understand. I wasn't going to concerts and seeing how big Waylon was. I
Right.
knew he was. I knew he was famous, and they had a giant house in Brentwood with a pool and Buddy Holly's motorcycle in the living room. So like there were certain things that stood out as being like, wow, this is pretty.
That's not normal.
Shooter had toys before they came out. That
Right.
was that was what I remember. Like, oh, what's he gonna have this time? And so, um, but in terms of the mythical figures, like, not really. Now I feel it probably more because some of these people are deceased and I don't see them anymore. But it just all felt very real, and they were just his friends.
Yeah, that's my mom's family. My grandpa ran a music store in Denver called Colfax Music, and when people came in town, they would rent stuff from them. So my mom was growing up, like my grandpa was very good friends with Billy Cobham. And like Manfred Mann would come in, Leonard Skinner and Joe Cocker's guitar. One of them showed up in my family, right?
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, I don't have it, which is driving me
He
nuts.
was one of my dad's good friends too.
He's an interesting guy.
He and
Really
Cocker were
interesting
good buddies.
That Mad Dogs and Englishman record that's one of the best records I've
Classic.
ever heard in my life. That version of The Letter and Leon Russell's playing guitar.
Yeah.
Anyway, but like there seemed to be a time when, obviously not for everyone, but celebrity and I guess regular life were a little bit closer together. Like they were accessible people that you could see at a place. And now it's not that. With social media, you don't have. There's a thing that people are putting out, celebrity-wise, and they go, okay, that's who this person is, but you're not going to run into them at the store. They're not at Nashville, like hanging out. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think you probably see it more in Nashville than anywhere else, but because Nashville's supposed to be known for not bothering celebrities, right? But I don't know. That may be changing.
I don't know. I'm not a celebrity.
Don't sell yourself short, Sam.
Hey, I've been recognized a couple of times, but
There you go. Okay.
it's a pretty niche thing.
There you go.
I was at a ZZ Top show, and which was great, still killing it. But people came up to me, and I was like, "Oh no, I got to be a character now." Like you have an opinion of me.
Yeah.
That's very odd. But so now you have all these old records. First of all, does degradation happen with these tapes? Is that something you're worried about?
No, no, the tapes, they're preserved really well, and you just so during the process you take them in and they like reheat them essentially. Like you hear people say, oh, they have to bake the tapes.
Yeah.
Because you have to warm it up at like it's like 120 or 130 degrees for like 24 hours, just so because the tapes get brittle.
Oh,
Right.
right.
And,
That makes
they can
sense.
break the actual tape adhesive dries up, and so that it'll snap when it's running. But if you warm it up, it's just like it was recorded yesterday. It's crazy.
Okay, so you're not racing against
Right,
time
we're
before
not.
these fall
No,
apart.
no,
Good.
I'm glad because like that, the earliest thing I found was the 1966 tape, and it sounds incredible. My mom was like, yeah, he just went and like bought a like Curtis Mathis 4-track or something for his back porch and just sat up there with, I guess, a mic on his guitar and a mic to sing in. You can hear like birds chirping in the background and stuff. It's crazy.
Do you have plans to like put that out?
Yeah, there's not an exact plan of when it will happen. I mean, saying we're right now is like, okay, like you don't want to put it out too close together,
Right.
but at the same time, I feel like when you're an active band and you're touring and stuff, you have to really space things out.
Right.
And
Unless you're charging profit.
And I feel like with him and his music being different, us having like different types of projects that I'm kind of thinking 2 releases a year, at least for the next few years. We have Steve Jordan. Do you know Steve Jordan? He's the current drummer for the Rolling Stones,
Yeah.
and very well respected. He's working on an album of the last songs that my dad ever wrote. But they were working on it basically right before he died, and then we had what we recorded were supposed to be demos, and then those actually became the tracks, and so Steve's, overdubbing on those, and it's going to have a lot of really big artists on there. But then there's also like the album from 1983 called Dangerous, which was never released digitally, so we're able to kind of repackage that, re-release that, and the great thing about streaming is if something has never been on the streaming services, it's treated like brand new music. So for an album like Dangerous, we can roll out singles, right? We can treat it as a brand new release, which is great because it just, it wakes up the whole like streaming algorithm and, feeds the beast.
Well, I mean, there's 1 million monthly listeners on Spotify right now to your dad's stuff,
Yeah.
which is we get a lot of emails from acts. They're like, I want to come on the show. 1 million's a lot.
Yeah. And it's growing. I mean, honestly, if we went back maybe a year and a half, I bet it would probably be, between 400,000 and 600,000. But
Right.
by continually releasing new music and like I said, it feeds the beast. The streaming world pays more attention to you because you put out a new song and they listen to it and they're like, oh well, what else does he have? And they end up spending 2 hours listening to Tony Joe White. Whereas if you weren't putting out anything new, they may hear one song that comes up on their
Suggested.
suggested
playlist.
listener. Yeah, right. So,
But now with the way streaming works, all the bands that we talk to make money touring, and not touring, but selling merch,
Right.
right? Not even fucking touring. You cannot support an album with a tour, right? That's very obvious. So I don't know if this is a business plan to make money or a business plan for legacy, obviously, but probably a little bit of both. But how are you supporting these records without touring, without having merch tables, without, like appearances on late night shows, which don't even exist anymore?
Right. Well, that's a good question. So, like some of the earlier ones, we didn't really do a whole lot, right? We just sort of followed the streaming method of 3 singles, put out the album, and then maybe I would print a small batch of vinyl and CDs just to sell direct through his online store to the fans. But so I guess the end of last year, I brought on board Ivy PR. It's Maria Ivy and her company.
Yeah,
It's
which is
here in
why we're here
Nashville.
right now.
What's yeah, exactly. So they're the ones who set this up, and so they're helping me out with press opportunities, and especially having this Flying Mojito Brothers record. Those guys are touring, those guys are
Right.
playing shows, so that promotes this record. But when it comes to looking down the road, when you don't have that sort of thing, then yeah, I mean it's pretty much just press, and I do most of the interviews or podcast, or if anybody wants to talk about Tony Joe White, I'm always happy to do it.
Have you thought about or done like one-off shows where people come in and play his stuff?
We haven't. We've talked about trying to do something like that around the Americana Music Fest.
Yeah.
Maybe having an event where maybe a few people come and play a couple of his songs or whatever.
I mean, if you get Dan Auerbach and Marcus King to do it, I think people would probably show
Yeah, that's
up.
quite a showcase.
Yeah, that would be incredible. Dan, maybe like if Dan does another record, which is something we've talked about, maybe then he could put something like that together. But I think a lot of it's just timing and having someone lead the charge for something like that. Having there needs to be a reason, I think, other than just to do it. But we're planning on starting a Tony Joe White party at Americana Fest. Hopefully it'll be an annual event. Says we launched a beer called Cowboy Singer, which was a song that my dad and Waylon wrote together, which is really great because that's actually made me think about what you said earlier. Like these guys in the 70s, like they weren't country artists, they were cowboy singers, right? They didn't have crazy vocal range and all of these things. They were just dudes that sat around the campfire playing these songs, and then
Some of them had no vocal range.
yeah, someone couldn't sing at all. But then that translated, and people wanted to hear it. So so we have. I think we're going to do like a party during Americana Fest and try to have the Flying Mojito Bros come play. Maybe do it at the upstairs of the Martin's Barbecue downtown because they're carrying Cowboy Singer beer now. But then maybe the second year of that party, it's what you were referring to, right? Some people coming in and playing Tony Joe songs. But I think a lot of it just depends what project we're supporting at that time,
Yeah, I mean, do you know what's coming next? How long of a plan out do you have?
So, so I'll tell you what's coming next.
Yeah.
His biggest album. No, but I haven't told anybody this yet.
I love it when people break stuff.
Okay,
Yeah.
breaking news. So his biggest album is Closer to the Truth. Like when you look at the streaming services, this album was released in 1990, and it has like Steamy Windows, Tunica Motel, a bunch of those songs, and for whatever reason, it just totally resonated especially with European fans. And so I was thinking like, okay, I wonder if like we could re-release this album because it's it's so popular. And I started going back and listening, and I was like, oh my gosh, like one, it was recorded in Muscle Shoals, which is the good thing. The bad thing was it was like 1989 when they were there, and so there's like electronic drums on a lot of like his best songs.
Yeah.
And like a keyboard bass that's like this sounds terrible, and I was
Right.
like, God. So we were going to just re-release this album or reprint it on vinyl. I couldn't find the master anywhere, and I was like, man, I can't find the master. But I did, things happen for a reason. Find all of the multi-track reels from Muscle Shoals.
That might be
Whoa.
more helpful.
Yeah.
Way more helpful because
Yeah.
now I'm going to go into Welcome to 1979, the recording studio that's in Nashville, and they specialize in a lot of tape restoration and transfer. And we're going to get my dad's drummer, a guy named Brian Owings, who still plays with Emmylou Harris and lots of people. We're going to get him to come add live drums on the songs that did not have live drums previously. It's like half did, half didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing that they were still great songs, but with a drum machine.
Despite all that, yeah.
Despite all that, right. And so I think like that gives this remix reissuing a lot more validity, right?
Yeah,
because it is
definitely.
different, right? It's not going to be just the same thing. But I also think the way that we're going to do it, and of course, there's going to be old fans who say, "Oh, don't touch Closer to the Truth. It's a masterpiece, and you're an idiot." But I think what we're going to do to it will improve the quality.
Well, I mean, there's like two bands from the 80s that I think hold up, and it's the Talking Heads and Dire Straits.
Yeah.
So if you can take the 80s out of some music, I think it'll probably only make it better.
It's funny, Dire Straits, I was with some buddies last week and we were, listening to music, and one of the guys broke out one of the like early Dire Straits records, like before Money for Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So good.
Yeah.
So good.
They're killer. Like, pretty regularly, it'll play a Dire Straits song when like my playlist ends and it goes to shuffle, which is weird because there's no other like 80s kind of acts on there.
Right.
And I'll be like, wait, what the fuck is this? And it'll just be a Dire Straits deep cut. And I'm like, God,
Yeah.
this is a good band.
I mean, go back and listen to those. I think there's probably 2 records that were before Brothers in Arms.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to hit skip. They're just perfect Knopfler all the way through.
So you're putting out that record next. Do you
Yeah,
have a timeline
Closer
for
to the
that?
Truth will be out this fall.
Okay.
Okay.
So in between then and now, we got this record that just came out with the Flying Mojito Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have Closer to the Truth, and then we have years of back catalog to continue down.
Yeah, well, then we'll have Dangerous. The reissue of Dangerous will probably be, maybe spring of next year. And a lot of it, too, depends on when Steve Jordan decides he has this album ready.
Right.
Because
That'll
once he's ready to go with, he has, like, Mavis Staples, Willie Nelson, Knopfler, like, giant artists that have added parts to this record. So whenever he has this ready, I'm just going to clear the runway for a while. But I feel like everything that I'm doing now will just prep things better. So when he puts this out, there'll be more people paying attention.
Yeah, I mean, I think the work that you've been doing, because I go down music rabbit holes, right? So I've been aware of your dad, but I've seen more of his stuff in the past 6 months than I ever did before. So I think people are, again, people want that. People want older acts that they didn't know about, because a lot of the music now, no offense to modern musicians, is just rehashing old acts. You listen to a new band, you go, that's Leonard Skinner.
Yeah.
I could just listen to them. But
Yeah.
there's no more Leonard Skinner songs coming. So when there's an artist that has more songs coming, I think people are ready for it and wanting it, regardless of if they can go see that guy tour anymore.
Right.
Yeah, and I think the great thing about my dad's music is, almost everybody should like one of his songs, because stylistically he's all over the place. So, we put out this Flying Mojito Brothers record, which his older fans probably won't be happy. They probably don't love that, but we're getting a lot of newer fans with these guys out playing shows and awakening people to his music. So then Closer to the Truth is going to make the older fans really happy, this fall. And so then we had put out what was a country record at the end of last year. So it's like the diversity of all the different styles he has, like there should be something for everybody,
Yeah.
Right, and you're not catering it to everybody. There's just a breadth of work that is incredible.
Yeah.
Is
I mean,
something
there's
for
so
everybody.
much. You just put it out, and
Right.
the people that like it can enjoy it. And if they don't like that, well, maybe wait for the next project or go listen to something old, because there's a lot to choose from.
Yeah.
Well, we talked to Matt Axton, Hoyt Axton's son, and he told us how Billboard used to have, how they'd have charts for
right.
like pop songs, rock songs, right? And it would be the list of whoever, and then it would say other, and it would just be Hoyt Axton
Yeah.
under it. And I mean, it's kind of the same thing where if you listen to a Hoyt Axton record, the next one's probably not going to be the same.
No.
You know?
Yeah.
And I feel like since we've been having this conversation, I've been thinking about Hoyt Axton because it's hard to find people similar, where you're like, what am I getting?
Yeah.
It's all American, but how? How's it being delivered? And I think your dad kind of falls into that other category.
Yeah.
Maybe
Oh,
it's
yeah.
Hoyt Axton and Tony Joe White.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I think like when you look at the list of people who have recorded my dad's songs, it's probably longer and more diverse than just about anybody that you can imagine. I mean, who else can say that Tina Turner, Kenny Chesney, and John Anderson recorded the same song? Steamy
Yeah.
Winter, they all three recorded that, and so I think that says a lot about his style because he really wasn't too country, right? And he wasn't too pop, and he wasn't too he wasn't too anything. So like his songs should be open to interpretation based on what type of artist you are and how you want it to feel.
And I mean, that's good songwriting.
That's the mark of a good artist right there.
I mean, you look at the list and it's crazy. I mean, obviously you put Elvis and Tina Turner and Ray Charles and Kenny Chesney, Hank Jr., Willie. I mean, Waylon, Rod Stewart covered one of his. Like, it just goes on and on. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool that there's more stuff that's gonna keep coming, man.
Yeah, you're doing good work.
Thank you.
And
I
I'm not
enjoy
a
it.
disco guy, but it's a good record. I like it when that's not true. I'm a disco guy for like
There's
the
some
best possible disco bands.
Yeah,
Like
there's
I
some
like
good-
ABBA,
Yeah.
but
If you have a chance to see the Flying Mojito Brothers live, you should go because it's a lot of fun. Like, and they've done a really good job finding their niche with like they're doing a lot of Fish after shows and doing shows
Okay.
with like Goose,
okay,
and so they make dance music, but they mix it with more like roots style music that is a little more digestible to probably our palates than some like hardcore electronic laser light show.
and I mean it's probably significantly more enjoyable than Fish.
Yeah, after a Fish show you need something to put the landing gear down, I think.
I saw Fish exactly one time. I'm a big Deadhead, love that shit. I saw Fish one time with one of my buddies, and beginning of the second set, he was on mushrooms too, and he looks
Yeah.
at me and he goes, "Are you good?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good." We just got the fuck out of Fish.
It's a lot, it's overwhelming. I could not see Fish at the Sphere, and I enjoy going to Fish shows, maybe being more in the back somewhere, like but to be in the Sphere and the intensity of their music combined with the intensity, like I would,
You're
I
just
would.
stuck.
Did you see Dead and Co at the Sphere?
I haven't been to the Sphere yet, but I saw it looked incredible. Did you go?
Oh my god, man. It was probably single-handedly the best show. I've seen Dead and Co many, many times, and it's probably the best pure show that I've ever seen. Like, there's merit to seeing them outside at like Deer Creek, and it's the old school vibe, but like just show-wise, you're like, oh my god. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how anyone trips there during it. It's very steep and it's very disorienting.
Yeah.
But I mean that venue combined with that band to me is one of the best things that could have happened.
Yeah.
And there's rumors that they're going back, which is interesting because Bob's dead. So who's coming back?
Yeah. It's a slippery slope at that point, right?
I mean, if it's John Mayer and Sturgill Simpson, I'll be amped.
Yeah, that would be good.
That's what
I
I've
mean,
been pushing for.
This will live. The dead will live forever.
It seems that
I
way.
feel like we're entering a period in music where there's going to be very few artists who are unique, original, and will stand the test of time.
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing too with there's a marketing book, and I can't remember the name of it, but when I was in college I read it, and my dad's gonna give me shit about this because he loves this song, and the other day was like, "Why do you always shit on Brandy?" I was like, "This is the example of the book." But Brandy by Looking Glass sold more than any Dead record ever, but they ain't playing the Sphere in 2024. Dead and Company is, you know. that's the kind of thing where you're running out of original members. You know, there's a Family Guy joke that was like, you want to go see Three Dog Night? It's none of the original members and none of the original fake members.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, and I mean, like, yeah, I don't know. It just gets confusing. Like, I know I saw something where Journey was wanting to tour, but the guy that replaced Steve Perry didn't want to play shows. It's like, wait a second, like, you you are obligated,
Yeah,
right?
that's
You were
but
the
you're also
replacement
not
guy.
Steve Perry. Like,
right.
Yeah,
you know,
like
or who's in the Turtles? I saw the Turtles and the Trogs and someone else are coming to Cincinnati, and I'm like, who the fuck's in those bands?
they're all deceased, right? Like,
Yeah, like
Yeah,
I
it's not
saw
the Turtles.
the
I
original
tell you
second
one band
cousins.
that is still has it going is Widespread Panic. I went and saw them in Birmingham probably
Yeah, I
like
bet.
3 weeks ago, and Buck Williams, their manager, I saw him the next morning at breakfast and sat down with him. His son Hunter was actually my dad's agent, so I've known
Okay.
Buck and Hunter a long time, and and I was like, Buck, I was like, I've been to Widespread shows as much as I can the last 4 or 5 years. I was like, but this is the first time I saw like tons of like young, like college age kids, like boys and girls. You could tell they were University of Alabama kids that had come to the show, tons of them. And I had not seen that in recent years. And so I was like, Buck, did you notice that? He goes, yeah, I did. He goes, you know what's happening is there's Widespread Panic cover bands that have popped up and
Oh,
are
yeah.
playing like frat houses and bars and college towns and all this stuff. And it's like reawakened the Widespread Panic fan base.
I mean,
And
they're like just old enough for that.
yeah, and
You
just
know?
and it's like young college kids, and then there's a gap. There's nobody in like their 20s there.
Hey, I'm a white kid.
Not
I
many
like
people.
them.
You like them, but for the most part, you look around the crowd and people are like 40s and 50s, but now you're seeing like some 20s.
Is Jimmy Herring back with them?
He was not at the show I saw.
Okay, because
Yeah,
I know
Nick,
he's been in and out.
Yeah,
Um,
Nick, was it Taylor or something like that? He was.
there's a picture. This guy Andy Thomas, who we talked to on the podcast, put out an album, and it was produced by Dave Schools. And they posted a picture for the album release, and I looked at the shirt that Dave Schools was wearing, and I was like, I made that fucking shirt.
Yeah,
What was the shirt?
It was like it's an old Dead shirt that I made like 3 years ago, or I don't know, 2023-ish for the tour. Then there's like the Wall of Sound on the front and a wizard on the back. And it just says it's a wizard over the Wall of Sound. See, it was so old I don't even remember what it is. And then like an earth on the back, and it says God is sound. And Dave Schools has that shirt, and it makes me happy every time.
Man,
of course.
that's cool. Really cool.
Now I just want to talk to him on the show. But yeah, man, I like this record. I'm excited for the follow-up records.
Yeah.
This has
We
been
have a
a
lot
good time.
coming. Are you guys in Nashville?
No, we're in Covington, Kentucky.
Oh, okay. Well, do you ever come to Nashville?
Yeah, me and my wife go to Nashville 2 or 3 times a year.
All right. Well, hit me up if you guys are coming back here anytime, and be happy to take you out for a beer or let you come check out the office and see all the Tony Joe stuff. It's like
Definitely.
Oh yeah, I'd love
like
that.
a museum.
I would love.
I'll bet.
I love old shit. it's my favorite. I appreciate.
If you want, we can do a special broadcast from here.
Get me Waylon Jennings.
We could listen to some Waylon. There's some tapes of like my dad and Waylon just like, Waylon came over to the house to hang out. My dad
Hit
"Hey,
record."
Let's go record something.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool. Next time I'm down there, I will hit you up. I appreciate you doing this, man.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a lot of fun talking to you guys.
Yeah, this has been
Great
a
to
good
meet
time.
you, Jody.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I guess just let Sophia know when this is going to air and whatever else we need to do, and